You still hear this phrase, si se puede, that you coined today. How does that feel whenever you hear activists chanting that phrase?
Oh, I love it. And it was actually coined in the 70s. They had passed a law in Arizona that if you said huelga, a strike, you could go to prison. And they said, oh, no se puede. In Arizona, you can't do any of that. And my response to them was, si se puede in Arizona. And so that's how the chant was really born.
Ever think about where your food comes from? Let's be honest, a lot of us probably don't think about it enough. The conditions that yield it, the hands that harvest it, and what it takes to get from farm to table. But Dolores Huerta did.
And there's been so much violence against our people in California. It seems like the consumers are really supporting the farm workers, and they are supporting the boycott.
She made it her life's mission to liberate the laborers who feed America. In the 1960s, Dolores founded what would come to be known as the United Farm Workers Labor Union, alongside fellow activist Cesar Chavez. They didn't just fight for safer working conditions and better pay. They gave migrant workers a sense of dignity and ensured the people who put food on our table actually have a seat at the table. She's the mother of an entire movement and 11 children of her own. Hi, Dolores. It is so wonderful to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you also.
Now it's Dolores' turn to learn how her lineage influenced the Chicana icon she is today.
I was born in the state of New Mexico. My mother and my father were born in the same town that I was. It was Dawson, New Mexico, which is a coal mining town in northern New Mexico. And I grew up in Stockton, California, which is a very ethnically diverse population.
The farm workers that you have spent your life advocating for, do you see your ancestors, your family in their faces?
Yes, my dad, he was a farm worker hoeing the beet fields. Here we have temperatures over 100 degrees, but the farm workers are out there every single day picking the fruits and the vegetables that are on our table. And not only the ones in the field, but the people in the packing sheds, the people that have to deliver the food in their trucks. We have a tendency in our society that we do not value working people.
When would you say you solidified your calling as an organizer? What was that turning point?
I was invited to this meeting, and they were organizing this group called the Community Service Organization. And I met Fred Ross Sr., and when he showed us how people could come together, they could organize, they could take power, and they could make changes. But then the thing that really, you might say, hooked me was when Mr. Ross showed us pictures and news clippings of police that they had sent to prison for beating up Mexican-American youth. So when Fred Ross said, you can actually do something about this, well, that really inspired me to become an organizer.
You were beaten with a baton by a police officer, and it literally destroyed your spleen. How did that incident change you?
Well, it really didn't. I still believe in nonviolence, and I do respect law enforcement, but I do think that we don't have a police force. We have a police army.
And you also have to have this unshakable sense of optimism, which you had in the 50s and 60s, and you probably still have today, this idea that, yes, we can, si se puede, change the world.
Yes.
Where did that optimism come from?
I think from experience.
Si se puede! Si se...
Dolores popularized that iconic slogan, si se puede, in the 1970s. But you might have heard the English version, Yes, We Can, remixed by none other than President Barack Obama during his 2008 campaign.
Yes, we can.
4 years later, he presented Dolores Huerta with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. After receiving countless awards, even her own holiday in the state of California, Dolores Huerta has become a part of American history herself. But claiming an American identity is complicated. I know that in the past you've said that you never truly felt like an American. Do you still feel that way?
That's a complicated question. There are people that say that people of color are not American, and especially that dynamic is very, very strong right now. And they would like to dismiss people of color.
Do you identify more with the term Chicano than American?
Yes, I identify more with the term Chicano, yes.
Why?
I was always treated as if I was different, you know. I was always referred to as being Mexican-American, which I don't mind having that term. But you they kind of put the label on you. But then at some point in time, you have to accept it. I think it's important to know where we come from because that really tells us who we are.
We brought Dolores to La Plaza de Cultura y Artes in downtown Los Angeles, a museum that honors the influence of Mexican Americans like her.
That's a pretty fierce picture.
Inside, we met up with senior family historian Lisa Elzy from our sponsor Ancestry, who showed us what she found.
This is your family tree right here. You knew your parents and your grandparents, and then we have your great-grandparents here, including Marshall St. John, which you can see right there as your great-grandfather. You know he served in the Civil War, that he was from New York, came to New Mexico, but we're going to learn a little bit about how he got to New Mexico. So what we're looking at here is the 1850 census, Rochester, Monroe County, New York. This is your great-grandfather. He was orphaned at a young age, about a teenager is when his father passed away. And how old is he? Can you read that?
12?
Yeah, he's about 12 or 13, and he's living with another family. After 1850, he left New York and went west to California.
Oh.
Marshall decided to join the Union troops during the Civil War, enlisting in 1861 near Sacramento, and then traveling throughout the Southwest.
I knew that he had come to Sacramento, but I didn't know why, and I thought that it had been after he had enlisted. But it's obvious now that he enlisted in Sacramento. Okay,
He did.
I didn't know that.
He did.
But Marshall's time in the Army was cut short. This certificate of disability for discharge told us why.
He had a hernia. So this is back in the 1860s. So that was a pretty serious injury. And he was discharged in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So now we are at the place where
Okay.
your family is from.
I just was recently in New Mexico, in Mesilla, in that town, and they have a whole lot of information there because the Confederate Army was there in Las Cruces area.
Yes, there was quite a bit of skirmishing happening in that region, including where he was discharged.
Marshall made a life in New Mexico and married Elena Torres, Dolores' great-grandmother. Both of them captured in these rare and striking photos.
Photography was so new during the Civil War.
These photos are remarkably clear for the craft of photography having been so young at the time.
One of my brother's sons looks exactly like him.
Really? So we wanted to look at a little bit more about her family history. So here we have the 1860 census. But this is Elena. She's younger than Marshall. And how old is she?
9?
She's 9. With ancestry records and with Catholic Church records, we were able to go even further back.
Lisa traced Dolores' lineage all the way back to her 6th great-grandfather, Diego de Torres.
Oh my goodness.
Did you ever think you would know the name of your
No.
6th great-grandfather?
Had you seen that name before?
No, I had never seen that name before.
Now, this is pretty far back, but we were lucky enough to be able to find something. Can you see what date is at the top of this record, Dolores?
1738,
35.
35.
How about that?
Wow.
This record is in New Mexico territory at the time. It's a court case. This guy in New Mexico was mad at your ancestor because there was illicit trade happening between him and the Comanche.
Oh.
And they were only allowed to trade with the Comanche at certain times. And he kind of said, I don't care about these rules. I'm going to help out this group of people because they want these things and I can get it for them.
That's amazing.
But Dolores' family history lesson didn't end there. Diego's wife, Maria Martin Serrano, Dolores' 6th great-grandmother, took us further back in time.
The Martin Serrano name is very, very common and popular in the New Mexican region for being landholders. So we're going to go back even further now from your 6th great-grandfather. We're going to go back now to your 9th.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
This is like taking a trip to the moon.
His name was Luis Martin Serrano.
Wow.
And he was born to a man that was in the military with the Spanish and a Tano woman. Do you know what the Tano are?
No.
They're one of the Pueblo tribe.
Oh.
And she was known as Inez.
I kind of always assumed that my indigenous self is from my Mexican ancestry from my dad's side of the family, but to know that I also have that on my mother's side of the family is really wonderful to know.
I love that.
Makes me very proud.
This legal record from 1663 mentioned Luis by name and described him by another term.
It talks about him being a mestizo.
Oh.
Have you heard of that word?
Yes,
What does it mean?
It means a combination of the European and the indigenous.
Yes. That is the first person in your family on this line that is confirmed as a mestizo.
Beautiful.
So what does more than 300 years of Dolores' family history actually look like?
This is 14 generations
Wow.
of your family tree.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
How incredible is this?
Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable.
There are so many incredible narratives that we've discovered today. What do you think is the one that you identify with the most, that you connect with the most?
My attachment to the state of New Mexico, knowing that there's a very rich history there, and realizing that my family's history goes back so much further than I ever imagined, that is really amazing.
Do you have a new lens on what that phrase, American identity, means to you?
Well, it's something that I've struggled with all my life. The Mexican indigenous side of the family, I always like to say, well, we were here before the United States was the United States of America, because they do tell us when they look at us, go back where you came from. And we can say, hey, we've been here a lot longer than you have. So, we can claim our roots here in the United States on both sides of the continent.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.